The music was still playing when I opened that bedroom door, and for 3 full seconds, my brain refused to accept what my eyes were seeing. My wife, the same woman who wrote me letters every single week for 11 months, was lying in our bed with another man's arms wrapped around her. And the worst part? She hadn't even heard me come in, because she was too busy laughing at something he whispered in her ear. I want you to remember this moment, because by the end of this story, you're going to have to decide who the real villain is. It might not be who you think. Let me take you back to where this all started, just a few hours earlier. My name is Daniel, and I had just spent 11 months overseas, serving my country, while my wife Rachel stayed home alone. Every single night out there, I held on to one thought to survive: the image of walking through my front door and holding her again. She used to write me actual letters, real paper and ink, because she said texting felt too disposable for what we had. I kept every one of those letters folded inside my jacket, right against my chest, like they were the only thing keeping me alive out there. My flight got moved up 2 days early. I didn't tell her. I wanted to surprise her, to see her face light up the second she saw me standing there instead of waiting 2 more days. I called a cab straight from the airport, and the whole ride home, I kept picturing that moment over and over in my head. When we turned onto my street, I saw balloons tied to the mailbox. Red, white, and blue, moving gently in the wind. My chest tightened with happiness, because I thought she somehow knew I was coming early, and she was already preparing something special for me. I paid the driver, grabbed my bag, and walked toward the porch with a smile I hadn't worn in almost a year. That's when I noticed 2 wine glasses sitting on the railing, both half empty, one of them marked with a shade of lipstick Rachel never wore. I told myself it meant nothing. Maybe her sister came over early to help decorate. I pushed the thought aside, because after everything I had survived out there, all I wanted was to hold my wife again. I turned the handle slowly. The door was unlocked. I stepped inside without making a sound, and that's when I heard it. Laughter. Not Rachel's laughter. A man's laughter, coming from upstairs, from our bedroom. My feet moved before my brain could catch up. Each step up those stairs felt heavier than the last, like my body already knew what I was about to find, even if my heart refused to believe it. And that brings us back to where I started this story. The door was cracked open, the music was playing low in the background, and there she was. For a moment, I just stood there frozen, staring at a scene that felt like it belonged to someone else's life, not mine. This wasn't happening to me. This couldn't be happening to me. I had spent almost a year lying awake on a cold cot, thinking about this woman, and now, she was right in front of me, wrapped up in someone else's arms like I never existed at all. The man noticed me first. His eyes went wide, and he practically fell out of the bed trying to grab his clothes. That's when Rachel turned around, and I watched her face go through about 5 different emotions in less than 2 seconds. Confusion, then recognition, then something that looked almost like horror. "Daniel," she whispered, pulling the sheet up over herself like that was somehow going to fix what I had just seen. "You're not supposed to be here yet." Out of everything she could have said in that moment, that was the sentence she chose. Not, "I'm sorry," not, "This isn't what it looks like." She was upset about the timing, not about what she had done. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I just stood there in the doorway, still holding my duffel bag over one shoulder, still wearing the same uniform I had worn on the flight home. Something inside me went completely quiet, like my body understood before my mind did, that screaming wasn't going to change anything that had already happened. The man scrambled past me without saying a word, practically running down the stairs half-dressed. I didn't even bother looking at his face. In that moment, he didn't matter to me. He was just a stranger who happened to be in the wrong place. The person I needed answers from was sitting in that bed, clutching a sheet like it was armor. "How long?" I asked. My voice came out steadier than I expected, almost like it belonged to someone else. Rachel didn't answer right away. She looked down at her hands instead, and that silence told me everything I needed to know before she even opened her mouth. 4 months, she finally said, so quietly I almost didn't hear her. 4 months. While I was out there reading her letters under a flashlight, missing her so badly it physically hurt, she was here, building a whole other life. I thought about every single letter she wrote me during those 4 months. Every line where she said she missed me. Every line where she said she couldn't wait for me to come home. Had any of it been real? Or was I just someone she wrote to out of habit while her actual heart was somewhere else? I walked over to the closet and set my bag down slowly, because my hands needed something to do besides shake. "The balloons on the mailbox," I said. "Were those for me or for him?" She flinched at that question like I had slapped her. "Daniel, please, let me explain." "Answer the question, Rachel." She admitted it then. The party wasn't for me at all. It was his birthday. The same day I was supposed to come home, completely by coincidence, was the day she had planned to celebrate with the man who had been sleeping in our bed for 4 months. I had walked into a celebration, just not the one I imagined for 11 months straight. I felt something crack open inside my chest, but it wasn't the kind of pain that makes you scream. It was quieter than that, and somehow much worse. It was the kind of pain that makes you go completely numb, like your body is protecting you from feeling the full weight of it all at once. "I need you to leave," I said, and I barely recognized my own voice. "Not right now. Tonight. I need you out of this house tonight." Rachel started crying, and part of me almost felt sorry for her, until I remembered that 4 months ago, while I was sending her letters about how much I missed her, she was already choosing someone else over me every single day. Rachel didn't leave that night. She begged me to let her stay, promising she would sleep in the guest room, promising we could talk everything through in the morning when I wasn't so exhausted from the flight. Looking back, I think I only agreed because some small foolish part of me still wanted to believe there was an explanation that would make all of this make sense. There wasn't. I didn't sleep at all that night. I sat downstairs in the dark, still in my uniform, staring at the wall while I listened to her crying upstairs. Around 2 in the morning, I finally opened my phone and did something I probably should have done months earlier. I looked through our joint bank account. That's when the second gut punch hit me. There were charges I didn't recognize. A hotel 2 towns over, charged 4 separate times over the last few months. A jewelry store I had never heard of. Dinner reservations at restaurants Rachel and I had never been to together. She hadn't just been unfaithful with her time. She had been using money I sent home from my deployment to fund every single date with him. I thought about all those months overseas, taking extra shifts, volunteering for dangerous assignments, because the hazard pay meant more money for our future together. Our future. I had been building something for 2 people, and only one of us was actually invested in it. By morning, I had already called my best friend Marcus, who had been my roommate before I met Rachel. I told him everything, and without hesitation, he said I could stay with him for as long as I needed. I packed 1 bag, grabbed my important documents, and left before Rachel even woke up. She called me 11 times that day. I didn't answer a single one until the 12th call, when I finally picked up just to tell her I wasn't coming back, and that she needed to have her things out of the house by the end of the week. Since the house was in my name from before we got married. That's when Rachel said something that genuinely shocked me. She said I was overreacting, that plenty of military marriages go through rough patches when one spouse is gone for so long, and that if I really loved her, I would try to understand what those 11 months alone had done to her. I remember sitting in Marcus's kitchen, staring at the phone in complete disbelief. She was asking me, a man who had just spent nearly a year in dangerous conditions away from everything he loved, to understand why loneliness had pushed her into someone else's bed. As if my loneliness during that same time hadn't been just as real, just as painful, except I had spent mine writing letters instead of betraying her. 2 days later, her mother called me. I actually thought, for one brief moment, that she was calling to apologize on her daughter's behalf. Instead, she asked me to reconsider, reminding me how much Rachel struggled emotionally while I was gone, and suggesting that maybe if I had called more often during deployment, none of this would have happened. I sat there holding the phone, feeling something twist deep inside my stomach. Somehow, in the span of 48 hours, I had gone from being a soldier who served his country for 11 months straight to being the reason my wife cheated on me for 4 of those months. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just about Rachel anymore. Her entire family seemed ready to rewrite what happened, as long as it meant protecting her from consequences. I stopped answering calls from Rachel's family completely after that conversation with her mother. It became clear to me that nobody in that family was interested in the truth. They only cared about smoothing things over, so life could go back to normal. And normal for them apparently meant a version of events where I was somehow responsible for my own betrayal. Marcus let me stay in his spare room, and honestly, having a friend who didn't ask 100 questions meant more to me during that week than he probably realized. He just handed me a beer most nights, and let me talk when I needed to talk, and let me sit in silence when I didn't. Sometimes, that's all a person actually needs. About 5 days after I left the house, I got a message from a number I didn't recognize. It was a woman named Julie, and she said she needed to talk to me about something important. I almost ignored it, thinking it was some kind of scam, until she mentioned Rachel's name in the very first line. Julie turned out to be the wife of the man I had found in my bed that night. His name was Gregory, and according to Julie, he had been married for 6 years. She had suspected something was going on for months, but every time she confronted him, he denied it and made her feel like she was the one being paranoid. When Julie found out what happened, She said she felt sick, learning that her husband's affair partner had a husband who was actively serving overseas. She told me she had proof going back even further than 4 months, message screenshots, hotel receipts, all of it. She wanted to share everything with me, partly because she deserved answers herself, and partly because she wanted me to understand that Rachel had lied about far more than just the affair itself. According to those messages, it hadn't started 4 months ago like Rachel told me. It had started almost 7 months into my deployment, which meant she had lied to my face about the timeline too, probably hoping a smaller number would somehow make her betrayal feel less severe. Reading through those conversations felt like being punched in the stomach all over again, except this time from a completely different direction. There were messages where Rachel called me boring for wanting to write letters instead of texting. There were messages where she complained that being a military wife made her feel invisible. And then there was one message that broke something inside me permanently. Rachel had written to Gregory that she sometimes hoped my deployment would just get extended a little longer, so she could have more time before dealing with, in her exact words, going back to pretending everything was fine. She wasn't just cheating. She had been actively hoping I would stay away longer, all while sending me letters saying she couldn't wait for me to come home. I sat there in Marcus's kitchen with my phone in my hand, and for the first time since walking into that bedroom, I didn't feel sad anymore. I felt something colder than sadness. I felt absolute clarity. I forwarded every single message to my lawyer that same night, along with the bank statements showing where my deployment money had actually gone. And then I did something Rachel never saw coming. I called Julie back and told her I wanted to help her get the proof she needed too, because if her husband had been lying to her for this long, she deserved the same clarity I had just gotten. Julie and I ended up talking on the phone for almost 2 hours that night. It was strange, sharing this kind of pain with someone who had never met me in person. But somehow she understood exactly what I was feeling, because she was living through her own version of the same nightmare. We decided to combine what we had. My bank statements and messages, paired with her years of suspicion and the receipts she had been quietly collecting, created a timeline that neither Rachel nor Gregory could talk their way out of. 2 weeks later, papers were filed. Divorce on my end, and on Julie's end as well. Word spread fast in our small town, the way it always does. By the time Rachel realized what was happening, screenshots of those messages, including the one about hoping my deployment would get extended, had already reached several of our mutual friends. I never sent them myself. Julie's sister apparently did, after Julie shared everything with her own family for support. Rachel showed up at Marcus's house one evening, banging on the door, begging me to talk to her. I stood on the porch and listened, because some part of me still wanted to understand how someone could write me love letters with one hand while destroying our marriage with the other. She cried, she apologized. She said the loneliness of military life had changed her into someone she didn't recognize. I asked her one simple question. If I hadn't come home 2 days early, would she have ever told me the truth? Or would she have kept living 2 separate lives for as long as she could get away with it? She didn't answer. She just stood there crying. And that silence gave me the only answer I actually needed. Rachel's parents called one final time, asking if there was any chance of reconciliation, reminding me how much history we shared together. I told them the same thing I had been telling everyone for weeks. History doesn't erase betrayal. It just makes betrayal hurt more. 3 months after that night in the bedroom, my divorce was finalized. Around the same time, Julie's divorce from Gregory finalized too. We had gone through this nightmare together as strangers, and somewhere along the way, we had actually become friends. The kind of friendship built on shared pain and mutual respect, rather than anything romantic. I moved into a small apartment near my base a few months later, and for the first time since coming home, I actually felt like I could breathe again. I didn't feel bitter anymore. I felt like someone who had survived something difficult and come out the other side with his eyes wide open. But here's the part of this story that still bothers me to this day. The part I need you to think about carefully. Rachel's family never once apologized for trying to convince me that her affair was somehow my fault for serving my country. They never acknowledged that loneliness doesn't justify years of lying, months of stolen money, or hoping your spouse's deployment gets extended just so you can enjoy your affair a little longer without guilt. So here's my question for you. If someone's family tries to rewrite the story to protect the person who did wrong, do they deserve any place in your life afterward? Would you have cut them off completely like I did? Or would you have tried to keep some kind of relationship with them for the sake of the years you once shared?